Hello everyone, I'm Silent Death and welcome back to my Let's Play Space Engineer series. Today, well first off, there's been a patch. The first implementation of factions. I'm actually not particularly pleased with this. There was a poll or survey a little while ago, and factions was actually the third thing listed, or voted on, the third most popular option, with programming blocks being the first. So that the fact that they decided to do factions first when it wasn't the most popular option does not make me happy, especially considering that factions do not affect, or do not really affect, everyone who plays the game, just the people who play multiplayer. I don't personally feel that it's the best decision, but then again, I'm not the one making the game. I am, however, unhappy about it. But enough about that. A couple other things. James Wood, I think it was, commented on the difficulty with separating this with the connectors. He basically suggested that I hold the bit in place and then back the ship away from it instead of trying to pull the bit off. So I did that with the tug here, and that actually worked quite well. However, that's no longer necessary, as now when you turn off the connectors, they actually stop trying to latch to each other. So it's much easier to get things disconnected that way. Also, with their engineer's toolbox, the thrusters actually burnt through this first block here, all the way through, and they also did some damage to the side blocks. That damage seems to have happened while the autosave kicked in. I think that's probably a little bit of a bug with just CPU lag and the way it calculates how the damage works. I would really think they should fix the damage to the grid of the ship. That way you don't have that problem. However, I don't think it's going to be too bad of an issue, though there is a couple of things that I've looked at that I've determined that I might want to add to this ship after having flown it a little bit. One is to add more lateral thrusters. Another is to add kind of docking ports for our SCVs so that they can just connect in and use the cargo that they have without having to transfer items back and forth. That's the two big ones. Another one is that it's rather difficult to dock with the connector. From this angle here, it's kind of hard to see where you're going. Though that may be something we can fix not by designing the ship, but by creating a better docking hub. I believe that is everything that I wanted to talk about. I've had to reset all the factions for all the ships, and I've been going through as I use ships and making them my own. It's going to take a while to get everything set, so some things are green right now and some things are white as blue. No one actually commented on color schemes for this, so I guess I will come up with something myself at a future date. I was hoping somebody who had more artistic talent than me would have something to say, but I guess not. This episode, we're going to start working on a chop shop. Something to take our various ships that we have floating around and future ships that we capture and grind them up. Because let's face it, manually grinding ships is not that interesting. In fact, it's rather dull. However, building a contraption that grinds up ships is actually quite entertaining. In fact, I enjoy watching ships being eaten by some marvelous contraption. There are a number of engineering challenges associated with building some contraption that grinds up ships. The first one is, how exactly are you going to move the ship? The easiest option, I should say, is to just drive the ship into the grinders. However, that is not really any more automated than using other ship and using a ship with grinders to drive it into the ship. It's not an improvement, I don't think. At least not in fun. Another option, let's actually check our change worlds and look at something that I built for one of my tutorials. Here we are in my how to filter, sort, and separate items tutorial. In the last example, I built this to grind up ships, which is a gravity press. Uses mass blocks with a gravity generator hidden inside of there to drive this ship into these grinders. And these two gravity generators counteract the gravity field of the rest of the platform. This is, well, it has the advantage of being probably the most automated way to grind up ships, as once this is in place, you just turn on the gravity and let it go. However, it is not particularly practical for large-scale production. First off, to grind up every type of cargo ship there is, you would need a 30 by 30 block of grinders, which 900 grinder is a lot. If I tried to run that many, I'm pretty sure my computer would commit seppuku, I guess it's called. The other downside is the cost of both the grinders and this platform here. It needs a lot of gyroscopes and thrusters to maintain a level, just be level, while the ship itself is not when it's pressing up against this. So it has to counteract whatever uneven face is pressing up against the grinders with a lot of very expensive thrusters. So that is another downside. Yet another downside to this is that using gravity is an acceleration and not a velocity. Thus, this speeds up instead of maintaining a constant speed. The further away from the grinders it is, the faster it's going to be going when it hits the grinders. So if you get this too far away from the grinders, you may find you're plowing into your grinders at 30 meters per second, and then you don't have any more grinders left. Another downside is that it's very, very difficult to get the ship properly lined up. There's not really a margin for error, both because this is detached and because you've got to get the ship directly over the grinders without actually touching them. That could be fixed by building some guides for the platform itself, but even then, if you had guides on 3 sides, you would still have a pretty narrow thing to get the ship in. There are potentially some ways you could get around that, but I still think in the end, regardless of what you do, it would be rather annoying, and that doesn't solve the problem with needing way too many grinders. So let's talk about another option. Back in our Let's Play world, there is one thing I forgot to mention that was included in the patch. It's one of the hidden things that's not yet available for release, but they have, I mentioned earlier in a previous patch, that they were doing something with the wheels to make them better. That's been updated again, still not ready for publishing, but basically they have wheels fused to a rotor that accepts keyboard input, or that is controlled by keyboard input instead of like using the control screen and sliders, so that when you press forward the rotor would turn the wheels, as part of their effort to improve how wheels work. Obviously that's not a particularly high priority, given that wheels have limited utility in this game, but it's something they're working on and should be out within the next few patches. Now back to talking about our chop shop. So the final way to move the ship is using some kind of rotor driven device. The benefit of that is going to be that you can maintain a fixed velocity, unlike with the gravity generators. The downside is the limited or relatively limited amount of torque that a rotor can produce. I forget off the top of my head how much power an engine produces. Let me look that up actually. Alright, I looked that up. The small, large engine block, but small thruster, produces 100 kilonewtons of thrust on manual burn, and the large thruster is about 12 times that. And the rotors, it says 33.6 meganewton meters. This value, calling it torque, does not really make a lot of sense, because A, torque depends on the radius of this, and the arm, or whatever point at the end that the force is being applied to, or applied against. So I'm not quite sure how they measure torque. But I do know that it's not as simple as their sliders seem to indicate, because the amount of torque delivered depends also on the velocity in this game, even though it technically should not. And I don't know how the relationship between the distance or the radius of the circle depends on this number here either. Also, with rotors, they have a tendency to stop trying to push once they get stuck. That is going to be something that's going to be a big problem, because we are going to be primarily using a rotor driven contraption, though there is the option for using a combination of rotor and gravity driven. Specifically, in instances where the rotor does get stopped, we could have a small gravity drive to kind of continually apply force. In that way, things would actually move. Even if the rotor got stuck, it would basically unstuck itself. Unstuck? How do you pronounce that? Unlodge. It'll unlodge itself. We'll say it that way. Now, the whole contraption, the whole chop shop area, is going to be rather complex. But what I like to do when we have something that's this daunting is to break it down into kind of bite-sized chunks. So we're not going to worry about the grinders part this episode. Instead, we're just going to worry about getting the ship inside of the contraption and getting it properly aligned. And to do that, we're going to be using rotors and, again, possibly augmented by gravity generators. We'll also need a great deal of torque to move large ships like the military mine layer, as well as we'll need something that's big enough to accommodate all the types of ships. I believe the largest axis facing the front is either 28 or 29 blocks across in one direction. So that would mean we would need a 28 by 28, or probably go with 30 by 30 block entry in that direction. But I do not know how long the longest ship is. That is something I need to check. So let me do that while I recharge my suit. Okay, these are all the cargo ships, just copied and imported into a copy of the Let's Play world. So, Mining 3 is the widest at 27 blocks. Military 3 is the longest at 39 blocks, I believe it was. And the height, we're just going to make that the same as the largest width to keep things easier. So that's how big our entry area needs to be. Now then, let's go back to our survival world and start work on it. This box that you see here is 28 by 28 by 39, the theoretical size or largest size of our ships that we will be grinding up. And as you can see, this is too big to hide behind the asteroid. We either have to move this contraption to hide behind a different asteroid, or set up some defenses. At the very least, we're going to be building it here, and we may move it later. Thus, we'll need some defenses set up here, which I will probably do off camera. Just some floating things like I had built around our old entrance to the asteroid, though with more ammo, I hope. So what we're going to do is come off 10 blocks. On each side. And then we'll connect this. And this will be our actual outer, or the inner wall of our docking area. That means we'll have a 20 block gap for which to guide the ship in, which should allow us to do it without too much fiddling. And that's really the whole point of this area. It's just to allow us to get the ship inside of the contraption without having to do really fine detail maneuvering. What we're then going to have happen is, while the ship's inside of this box, we're going to have piston arms come from the outside, from each of the 4 directions, and they're going to push the ship to the dead center. Thus, we're going to need quite a deal of torque to get that, to accomplish that, as well as enough length of our arms so that they can reach all the way as close to the center as they'll need to be, given the smallest size of the ship, which probably is going to be this. So it looks like 3 blocks from the center. So what I'm going to do now is... crap, we've already... Okay, yeah, asteroids are already being the problem. I guess what I'm going to do now is go ahead and build some defenses, and then I'll finish creating this larger box, and then I'll be right back. I have the framework laid out. We also have a little bit of defense, not much, and it's burning through the ammo rather quickly, but it's what we have. Now then, we'll want to have pistons that come from the center of the inner area. Being that this is 28 by 28, I think we'll expand it to be 29 by 29, which means one side's going to go out one more. Not a huge deal. Then we'll need a piston with a travel distance to be 10 plus half of this minus half the width of our smallest ship, which is rounded to 2. So 2 minus 14. I believe that's correct. Yeah. 14 there. And another 10 here. So 24. So the total travel distance of our pistons going to be 22. And that's for every single side. That means we're going to need... this will be basically the piston arm itself. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I guess we can go maybe 3 more out or 4 more out just to have the extra guidance length there if we need it. Thus the piston itself, how we're going to do that. Actually, let me switch to my test world. Alright, here's how we're going to get the extra torque. We have a rotor down here. Connect to this first section with the merge block there. And then above that, a block that's apart, that's also a station right here, with another rotor. And a merge block on the end of its arm. So if we turn on our rotor, slowly, they connect together. And now they're the same ship. So we can just... whoops. Crap. I think I just broke it. I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah. Well, we could just build them together and then get rid of the merge blocks. And then they'd be all the same thing. And this rotor here would get power from the station as it would go up through this rotor and into that. That way we wouldn't have to have an extra generator on that. Thus we can build, I'm probably going to build 5 rotors. And then this part here at the very top one be our normal kind of piston arm. We can just put, say, a rotor here and do the normal kind of piston thing. Like that. And that'll be how we get all the extra torque. what I'm thinking for series like this, for projects like this, I should say, is I'm not going to try to do this all in one episode, and I may not even work on it like next episode. I may work on something else, but I will entitle the episodes like, what is this, episode 16? It'll be episode 16 Scrapyard, colon, and then whatever we work on for that particular part of the project. Because I have a number of projects that are going to take a rather long time to do, more than one episode. And I don't want to get burnt out myself or kind of overwhelm you by cramming them all into one episode. So that is currently how I plan to do it. We'll see how it works out, and if it doesn't work out, I'll come up with something else. So again, that is it for this episode. The next episode, I am not sure when it will be, but I'm going to build the pistons off camera, so I'll have at least that much done for next episode. I'll also be using the guides will be interspersed with landing gear. The landing gear guides will be interspersed with welders, like I showed in the mining brick ship when I was building that, to help prevent wear and tear. Like if you like, subscribe if you're not, leave a comment if you have anything to say. I do read all the comments. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time!